Hello, I'm Kimberly Ramkalawan. As we now know, Budget Day is Monday, October 1st. In tonight's program, we present part one of a special report on the pre-budget consultations held by the Minister of Finance as he met over the last 2 months with a wide range of stakeholder groups. And later, we feature positive visions of our future from the series of vignettes we have produced in collaboration with the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development, looking ahead to Trinidad and Tobago 50 years from now.
It also is for maxi taxis and trucks and that kind of thing. And if you look at it, it would have a significant impact on the price of food, it would also, price of transportation and so on. We recognize that we can't do everything for everybody right away. And I think there's been a bit of a misconception about a budget. I think generally everybody expects that everything will be said and done in the budget and everything will be said and done in the year after the budget. And that's not really how things would actually work in practice. And what I realized as I started to listen to these stakeholder groups is that many things that are being suggested are things that was spanned several years. In other words, if it is that you say you want to put up a car park somewhere, it's not going to get finished by the time you get your town and country planning approvals and you get all the other statutory approvals and then you do the tendering and you get, that's probably the year. And then you start the construction. So you probably don't see the construction for more than a year after the budget has been read.
That was Finance Minister Larry Howai in an opening statement early in the punishing schedule of meetings he has set in July in an assignment of consultation with representatives of no less than 30 stakeholder groups. He was planning for the formulation of the 2013 budget, his first major assignment since being given the portfolio in the cabinet reorganization in June this year. Given
the existing conditions of the Treasury, we can't do everything for everybody right away. We have to prioritize some things, and some things we do this year, some things we do next year, and so on. So part of the post-budget consultation is really for me now to give feedback and say, well, look, based on what we've looked at, we can't accommodate these things in this year. What we can do is we can put it on the agenda for next year. So, or the following year, or we see this as a 3-year or a 5-year program, and this is how we think we would suggest it roll out, and then you can give us some feedback on it. So we start, in a sense, the pre-budget consultation for the next budget is really the post-consultation for the current budget.
In the majority of cases, in the meeting with representatives of organizations and back-to-back meetings with members of his technical team, it was his ambition for advancing the process of understanding the project. He was restating the overall objective of the exercise.
The sector is going through a particular crisis because of the nature of the moment that we stand in. Golden Age generation is passing on. Trinidad Golden Age, 1930 to 1950. A lot of the things of value that we consider important in the cultural vocabulary, the creative sector, and other sectors generated during that period. Panmas, Calypso, the entire ethnic festival circuit, male secret societies impacting the country in terms of cultural imprint, trade union movement, independence movement, giants walk the earth. Right? It was a phenomenal period. That was a period when Trinidad began its global impact on planet Earth. There are now 300 Trinidad-style carnivals, etc., etc. They're worth $15 billion plus, and all those things, ground zero of that, 1930 to 1950, and the individuals in that period. That period is exceptionally important, and we're going through a period now with that generation, 80 and over, most of them, and they've been passing on for the last decade plus.
Cultural warrior Rubadiri Victor, making his pitch on behalf of the Artists Coalition, an amalgam of some 16 cultural organizations seeking to secure leverage as it has not enjoyed before. He lamented the fact that there's a lot of work to do to catch up with what is necessary in order to provide the respect and add the value to those contributors of whom he spoke as a critical element in the country's further development. The national budget must take into account the enormous contributions this sector makes to the country's image, its welfare, and its preservation.
The problem is we have not been documenting collecting information, patenting specialized information, secret skill sets, etc., passing them on, creating institutions and industry out of these practices. A lot of these practices are multi-million dollar practices, some are billion-dollar practices, but we have not done the very basic work of mapping and trapping and patenting intellectual property inside of that.
In its presentation, the Artists Coalition of Trinidad and Tobago suggests what it called the fast-tracking of a number of initiatives which constitute what they call low-hanging fruit, which could quiet the sector and also inspire the citizenry in this year of the country's 50th independence anniversary. They say there was need for immediate acts which could be done to show good faith with the sector, and these include the immediate setting up of the Arts Council to the original expert panel specifications as the implementation arm of the progressive agendas of the creative and the cultural sector. The immediate fast-tracking of the regularization of land tenure of all panyards. The immediate convening of a committee to look after the legislative agendas for the arts with the aim of drafting bills for Parliament within 2 months, including laws like 50% local content on all broadcast media. The immediate commissioning of the East Port of Spain Council of Community Organizations to oversee the progress of the East Port of Spain Growth Pole and Heritage City. The immediate purchase of the 2 largest collections of Trinidad and Tobago music memorabilia and archives, and the hiring of the collectors as the first curators to begin the process of creating the House of Music due for East Port of Spain. Also, the provision of the warehouse facility for the nation's heritage material and the National Guild of Masters and the resourcing of the Guild, which will be charged with transmitting and documenting the genius traditional skills of the country by apprenticing master apprentices to master artists in the recreation of national masterworks like the 50 greatest mask costumes of all time, the greatest Jose Taj, or Ramlila effigies. With this group, as indeed he did with almost all the others, the minister sought to put some of the important cards squarely on the table as to what he was seeking to achieve in the nation's interest.
We need, therefore, to consider how we would meet our own commitments going forward. And meeting those commitments requires us to focus very heavily on revenue generation, also in addition to expenses. And many times groups come to us, and when they come, basically they look to see, well, these are some of the things we'd like government to do to facilitate us to be able to get our work done. And of course that has a cost for government. In fact, but given the situation that we face right now, we would like to get back to at least balancing our budget within a 3 to 5 year time horizon. So we're not saying that we must stop right away and balance everything. We're saying that we should do it in a way that recognizes the impact, particularly on the lower income groups.
One of the questions the minister has been asked to address from many quarters already is the issue of the huge subsidy on fuel. Without flinching, he signaled an intention to face it head-on.
Everybody say, well, you can cut your deficit in half by getting rid of the fuel subsidy. A big part of it is theft and wastage, but a big part of it also is for maxi taxis and trucks and that kind of thing. And if you took it, it would have a significant impact on the price of food, everybody will, price of transportation and so on. So we have to be mindful of how we do that. So we can't make the changes we like to make right away. We have to manage it in a particular way.
Represented by its director Linda Besson and board member Neil Derrick, a senior manager at the state oil company Petrotrin, the minister heard submissions from the Employers Consultative Association, using this intervention to let on of his concerns about the state of industrial peace in the country.
I think it's important that both sides, both labor and capital, understand the issues that confront each other, and that we all commit ourselves to a win-win situation in arriving at a solution for the challenges that we have.
And in speaking to those challenges, Mr. Derrick went philosophical in the beginning.
I think Karl Marx may have summed that up well when he said that there's a natural conflict. That the labor will want the best for the employees, and business will want to make the highest profit. And the both of them come in natural conflict. And the only way that could be resolved is if you find some issues that are collective that they both could agree around.
Then Ms. Besson sought to zero in on some of the nuts and bolts.
We need to be stuck to what affects us in good place. The issue of productivity is key to this country. If we have to move on without productivity, there's no competitiveness, and we know that. How do we get that culture back into Trinidad? That is critical for us. Quite recently, we have been to the International Labour Conference, and the issue of youth unemployment is really, it's happening. It's just unbelievable. The issue of youth employment, those are the people who are going to run this country in the near future. We need to do something to bridge that gap.
This group represents an amalgam of Shogunas Chamber of Commerce and the Sawa Business Association, these gentlemen feeling the need to go over ground that was familiar to them, if not to this minister. And the president of the Sawa Business Association in particular wanted to highlight what to him appeared to be uncoordinated planning in his area.
Now, the other thing that we look at in San Juan is the infrastructure. We have a lot of infrastructure happening with the highway and the Aranguez overpass and that kind of thing. But inside of the community, there is no real infrastructure. That you have the lack of roads and the filtering of traffic and the easy access to businesses. So that is a problem. We have in our mind that proper parking, creating more accessibility to the area, all that is going to help. So that we would like, it's a long-term discussion, and it's not something I think you could just place into the budget. There has to be planning, and it has to be probably a little more futuristic. You're parking outside of the quasi environment, and you have a shuttle service. So you provide a certain amount of work as well.
On another day, with the same approach to leveling with his audiences at these discussions, Minister Howai was again laying down the setting to a group of trade union leaders. In fact, he met separately with the Federation of Independent Trade Unions and NGOs, FITON, and the National Trade Union Center, as well as the Public Services Association.
This is a very, very important process, and it's absolutely important if we are to ensure that the budget is fully responsive to as many stakeholders as possible. I know we can't be fully responsive to every single stakeholder, but our intention is to listen, to hear what each stakeholder has to say, and to see to what extent we might be able to incorporate the recommendations and the proposals that the various stakeholders may have.
Watson Duke, president of the PSA, let on that he felt the minister was sufficiently seized of the issues which need to be addressed in the budget, and this only served as impetus for him to state what for him would be only obvious.
Having listened to the minister from his inception into office, even more recently this morning, we recognize that the minister is on target insofar as budgeting for the needs of this nation. And in order to ensure that our issues are rightly placed before him and not just taken for granted, we decided to come in person to have this meeting. High on the agenda are a number of issues. We want to start with the existing issues, which is we have 3 negotiations which have not been settled: National Insurance Board, Metal Industries Company, Agriculture Development Bank. We're hoping that with the minister's ability and information received, he will be able to put us in a position as some of our colleagues who have benefited from an improved national economy. We will also want to place before him the visa patuasa and ensure that such visa is given the level of finance that is required so as to give persons a nice golden parachute. Because we live in a time where we are talking about reduction in fuel subsidy, increasing the property tax, and so the money that one home with last year, we must take into consideration those things that may take place this year.
And there are some other issues of particular interest to those workers whom Mr. Duke represents.
We want to speak on the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority /BIR. We have some ideas about that. We want to find out why he's going the way of the TTRA as opposed to improving the conditions of BIR, which the employees work under. We want to look at the fuel subsidy, as many of our members are traveling officers, not just that they own a vehicle because it's desirous to do so, they own a vehicle because it's mandatory to do so. In the exercise of their duties, they require a vehicle. We want to know if fuel subsidy does not affect those persons in a real way at all whatsoever.
Again, after signaling his intention to find out more about where this minister was going regarding the highly charged matter of the property tax, by whatever name, Mr. Duke's opening pitch would not be complete without reference to this highly anticipated agenda item.
Then, in 2008, 2010, the PSA would have made a sacrifice, a tremendous sacrifice, on behalf of our members, and to a great extent, the state in which we live. We want to ensure that we receive double for our trouble, and not just some reflection of the state of the economy. The economy has improved, in spite of what people would say. We do not believe that it's a doomsday time in which we live. It's a time that sacrifice has already been made, and now is the time for my person, for my people to receive the choice meat. I would say, get the first sip of the chalice. We want our negotiations to end this year and end in the shortest possible time.
As it was with the PSA leader, so it was with the president of NATUC, Michael Lanizet, as to what is paramount from his standpoint for the consideration of the minister.
You know, there was this Nobel Economic Prize winner, Professor Paul Krugman, who stated that the economic performance of any country, the competitiveness of its business, and the standards of living of its people depend primarily on productivity over time. And the higher will be the standard of living of the people it employs. Productivity isn't everything, but it is almost everything. And I'm making that statement against the backdrop, Honorable Minister, and while in your opening remarks you say you are not here to negotiate, I cannot help, and I believe that I will be negligent in my duties as the President of NATO if we do not again raise the issue of the settlement of all outstanding negotiations that exists.
In seeking to set a new standard for these talks, the minister had on many of the times he addressed his audiences promised that they would go on after he presented the budget, whenever that is going to be, as one means of keeping every one of them in step with what may have happened with the expectations they expressed in the front end of this process.
One of the things that mentioned is that I wanted us to have a post-budget session, not just a pre-budget, right? And the reason for that is that there are a number of recommendations that we made, some of which we can't accept all immediately. But I know you make them in the spirit that they help your business or facilitate your business in some way. And if you don't see those recommendations being accepted, it is both a sour taste with you in terms of consultative process. But it also leaves you with a sense of frustration as you go about your business because you're saying, I need these things to help me. And I'm not seeing when they're going to come, right? Now, the problem for us as government is that we can't do everything for everyone to at the same time. It's just going to take some time. And we could probably program some of these initiatives in, and we might be able to say when we go through the details, because there's hundreds of submissions we have. When we go through the details, we may then say, well, listen, this particular initiative, we think it makes sense, but given all the other things that are happening and given all the other support mechanisms required to make it effective, this is not something we will do until the end. And what we will do is do these things in the meantime to make sure that by the end we can do it.
Using this as the takeoff point, Andrew Sabga, president of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, then started with this note of concurrence.
we would like to acknowledge the body of work that is being done by the various ministries in advancing the economy and providing for long-term sustainability of the economy. However, there's still a lot that needs to be done, and we feel that it needs to be speeded up. So many of the budget announcements of last year and prior have not necessarily come to fruition. And in particular, we would like to see some of those, in particular the divestment of public enterprises, in particular First Citizens Bank and EMF. So we look forward to those things coming to fruition as quickly as possible.
Restating the Chamber's long-standing commitment to work with the government in the effort to find common ground for the country's development imperatives, Mr. Sabga reaffirmed that pledge, promising to go further in the same direction.
We at the Chamber have been actively working with the government by sitting on various advisory councils, attending stakeholder meetings, working with various ministers and ministries, and we pledge to continue to do so, Minister, as to do our part as a responsible chamber towards sustainable development.
Tune in tomorrow, same time, for part 2 of this special report, Destination Budget 2013.
It also is for maxi taxis and trucks and that kind of thing. And if you look at it, it would have a significant impact on price of fuel, so, price of transportation and so on.
Chance to make your neighbor smile. One chance you get to tell a child how beautiful it is to give. One chance to laugh, one chance to live. Chance to live. Silence in the sun. You and me together. Our home where we belong. Sharing love with each other. Where our forefathers swam these rivers and seas. So will our children walk these streets and talking about sweet tea, that we will live as one. Into the future, there's no turning back. See your reflections in the red, white, and black. TNT.
Say where you want, there's not a place I know better. Come for holiday. Say where you want, I would love my country forever. Yeah.
50 years from now, I would really like to see Trinidad as a country, Trinidad and Tobago as a country, and the 2 islands, and we have 5 other islands outside. I'd like to see us as a country in which, first of all, there is no poverty, because I believe that it is within our means, within our ability to do that. Secondly, I would like to see us as a country that is highly educated, with a sophistication that accompanies that education, so that we understand the importance of civility. We understand the importance of openness. We understand the importance of valuing what is ours and bringing that to the table of nations in the world, and yet at the same time understanding that within our society there is need to have the kind of democracy and freedom and appreciation of diversity to make that kind of spirit possible, and at the same time understanding that the world is a richer place from having diverse countries with great diversity, bringing it to the table of the world, so bringing these things to the table of the world, so to speak. So I want to see us as a country that is high per capita income, very excellent quality of life that one might say is the envy of the rest of the world. We have all the requirements for it, the tropical climate, the natural endowments, the creativity of our people. And I would really like to see us as a country in which our people live a life of happiness. And other people, when they come here, see this as a place of happiness that they always remember. I want to wish all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago a happy 50th anniversary birthday. We've had independence for 50 years, and what we have achieved would not have been possible without the participation of all our people. And I want to ask, or I want to thank our people for what they've contributed and what they continue to contribute. This country is its people and the contributions of our people. And we need to remember that, and we need to value that. But more than that, I want our people to be unified in purpose, in all their diversity, in all the fulfillment of their 1.3 million dreams as individuals, under conditions of freedom and liberty and democracy. Unity of purpose is important, and if it is one wish I have for independence for all our people in Trinidad and Tobago, is that wish for unity of purpose as we are headed into the next 50 years of our life as an independent nation.